Market activity rising quite significantly yesterday, up 300%. Why the strong turnaround in sentiment?
Yeah, thank you very much, Alicia. Very good observation there about our market. You're seeing a lot of sentiments that are positive coming in, and most of the corporate actions that are also coming through are creating a bit of appetite in terms of the activity on the local front. Also looking at it in terms of the corporate actions, just like you mentioned, you're seeing Safaricom talking about boosting revenues, you're seeing Sasini coming through with the strategy move, and those kind of things are creating a lot of interest in terms of participation. Also, the recent behavior of the market, you saw the market dropping significantly, also creating a bit of interest in investors where they're seeing a lot of bargains and taking positions on some stocks like Equity Bank, as you mentioned earlier.
Let's talk about Sasini Tea and Coffee Company's move into the real estate sector. It's saying it's obtained permission to construct commercial and residential real estate on its one of its plantations. What do you make of this diversification?
Well, looking at it in terms of as a long-term strategy, definitely looking at how it has been performing in the recent past, the agricultural sector, and especially the reliance on agricultural sector specifically, has not been very favorable, especially because of what has been happening in terms of the climatic changes. And looking at them in terms of how they can cushion that through diversification, this will be a welcome move. Also looking at it in terms of the housing need that you're seeing in the country, well, definitely they might need to invest a bit in terms of how they can be able to position themselves, and also the capital expenditure that will come along with that. But hopefully that will be able to at least diversify their revenue stream and help them to be able to still sustain their profitability despite what we are seeing, especially in terms of the agri-related concerns of our economy.
TransCentury is a stock that took quite a knock yesterday, falling back by 7%. This despite some strong first half earnings where it managed to turn itself around into a profit-making position for the first half of 2011. Also betting on its stake in the rail transport over in Kenya, as well as increased power infrastructure. Why, despite the rosy picture that it paints for the rest of the year, are investors selling the stock?
Well, looking at TransCentury, basically being a stock among the stocks that have recently been introduced into our bourse, we're seeing it not yet stabilized in terms of the performance or in terms of the share price. And I guess because of that, you've been seeing the share oscillating between 30 and 50 shillings. And because of that, and the uncertainty that comes along with an IPO share, because we still have investors who have been holding it for quite a while, who are still looking for ways of exiting so they can be able to diversify their holdings. And also, we are looking at it in terms of the fact that some of the investment avenues that TransCentury is offering are more long-term, and our market right now is a bit keen on how the short-term performance behaves, and because of that we might continue seeing it oscillating between those ranges. And also looking at it in terms of the dividend payout, you're seeing them not coming out strongly on that front, and that's also another thing that's affecting some of our market as of now. But
perhaps a lack of dividend payout can be seen as an opportunity to reinvest those profits in future growth opportunities.
Well, definitely. Looking at it on that front, yes, definitely. And also in terms of positioning, I guess that's what some of the things that most of the investors are still trying to see, how they can be able to take advantage in terms of the share price. But looking at it in terms of how it has been behaving, just like you mentioned, we are seeing it oscillating very significantly. And I guess it could be more of investors coming out as well as others taking position on the same stock.
It appears investors like the news that we might have some increases in voice tariffs, given the fact that Safaricom, along with other telecom operators, are battling with higher operating costs. What do you make of its move if it does increase tariffs going forward?
Well, Safaricom has been a stock that most investors have been very, very keen on, especially noting that it controls a significant percentage of the daily turnover of our market. And the fact that the share price did not dip significantly after it went ex-dividend is already an indicator that investors are very bullish about it and hopeful that their revenues are going to remain strong. And hopefully, if at all, they're going to continue with their strategy, especially in terms of ensuring that their revenue base is stable and trying to protect their market share. Going forward, there might be a lot of prospects on the stock. And looking at it in terms of the fact that it's still trading above 3 shillings despite going ex-dividend is a very positive move. We are hoping that Bob Collymore is going to be very strong in terms of value addition, even as they think about raising their tariffs, just so that they do not end up losing some of their market share.
And of course, data is the new area for growth, as we see with telecom stocks throughout Africa. But let's move on to the monetary policy meeting today. That, of course, is a signal for the markets that they'll be looking out for in terms of where monetary policy is headed. Many are calling for aggressive rate increases, given the fact that the Monetary Policy Committee meeting has appeared to be behind the curve. It needs to restore confidence in its monetary policy making ability. What are your thoughts on what might transpire from today's meeting?
Well, excellent observation there, Samantha. Looking at monetary policy and especially their position on terms of how the market has been behaving, we must admit that the sliding of the shilling, the weakening of the shilling, as well as looking at the interest rates, interbank overnight lending rates has been a major concern in terms of how the economy has been performing, and seeing even the president coming on board in terms of trying to ensure that we strengthen the shilling, as well as trying to ensure that the interest rates are a bit more controlled. The monetary policy has quite a number of balls to juggle in terms of ensuring that the economic growth is not stifled, and also in terms of ensuring that the liquidity in the market is going to be a bit stabilized, so that you can be able to have the shilling stable, especially at a time like now. But looking at them in terms of how they perform, you're hoping that you're going to be able to put a rein on the central banks, or the banks, in terms of how their overnight lending has been, and also try to see whether they can be able to mop up some of the liquidity. So you should be expecting the CBR rate to go up marginally, just so that you can be able to see how you can be able to cover in terms of the inflation rates that you are seeing that are quite runaway at the moment.
And of course, those interbank rates are increasing expectation of a hike in the CBR rate. Thanks very much for your time today, Samuel. Samuel Wachira is General Manager of Drummond Investment Bank.